Hello again, Canadian Wrench. Today we're going to fix this engine, which is leaking oil, and it's leaking oil from the lower sump pan, which is right down the bottom. Hopefully you saw my other video. That's where we diagnosed the oil leak. Today we're going to fix it. So just like any project that you're doing or any repair, it's always a good idea to isolate the battery. So we're going to disconnect the negative. Step 1. All right, so step 2, we're going to stop counting the steps because I'm going to get confused by step 4. So step 2, we're going to remove this cover and this air filter box and everything to do with that. And I know there's a few wires that go under there. We don't want to cut wires, we want to disconnect wires. Let's do that. All right. Yeah, should replace that too. We're going to take these bolts out. There's 4 of them. Notice that these bolts have a little shoulder on them, and that's to hold that cover, to sort of center that cover where it's supposed to be. Alright, before I go any further, I'm going to have to disconnect this fuel pump off here, and I'm going to have to take these 4 bolts off here and remove that. Alright, there's 2 more remaining bolts, one here, one here. I loosen them off, and then you can wiggle this. It should slide off. These are just slotted, so you didn't have to actually remove the bolts, just loosen them enough that you can get past that shoulder. Alright, another thing to clean. So now we got the top of the engine here. We want to expose that because we want to hold this nut when we undo the pulley on the bottom where the PTO is. Alright, let's disconnect some of this wiring and we'll go from there. Alright, so I'm going to disconnect this white wire here, this connector. There's another connector there, but all it really does is go from here to here. And then there's other wires in between there that are still connected, like that gray one. So what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect it there. I obviously loosened it. I don't have that good of a hand. And this wire here, which goes to the coil, one coil. Here's your spark plug wire. All right, there's a coil. And then on the other side, another coil, another wire. This one's yellow. So we're going to disconnect those wires. We undid the large battery cable off the starter. You're best to hold the nut in behind when you undo it. And what else did I do? I undid the fuel line. And where it comes from the tank, I put the end of a drill bit in, a 1/4 inch drill bit, just to fit that 1/4 inch line. All right. Now we got a couple cables on the front here. We'll get those disconnected, and we're making some progress. Well, that was a great plan, but it didn't work. Connector's too big to fit in behind the starter and through and out behind here. So what I'm going to do is just cut it. I'll cut it just short of where the connector is, so right here, so I know what color wire I'm connecting to. So I'll just cut it right there. I know green wire to green wire, because this wire not only changes color, but it changes gauge. So maybe I should repair that. All right, so I have 2 cables to remove. There's this one here, which is your choke, and that one there, which is your throttle. So it's got a screw there that holds, it's a little clamp that holds the outer core of your cable, and the same here. Torque screw, little clamp, and it holds it. Before I remove them, I'm going to put a little mark with my paint pen right here, so I know whereabouts it is. We'll readjust it, but at least we'll be in the ballpark to reattach it. All right, those are next. I'm going to cut that tie wrap off too. All right, so you can see I put the yellow on there, and I also put it where the cable is. Like I said, I'm gonna readjust them, but I just want to be in the right ballpark. So we'll undo these, 2 Torx screws, and we'll remove those cables. You don't have to take them off all the way, I don't think. Maybe to there, and then you can slide it out from underneath like that, and then we'll unhook it off there. Okay. If you find you have multiple holes where your cable goes, either one of them, just put a little paint pen mark there too, and you know, you can actually tell because it's got a little bit of wear. But anyway, I've only got the one hole there. Some of them have multiple holes, so just to stop yourself from guessing, give it a quick mark. It's really easy. All right, we're gonna take these exhaust bolts out. There's 2 here, 2 on the other side. They're Allen key, and if this ever happens to you, you can't see, so you push your finger on the end as hard as you can, and then look at it. And for me, I can make it over to the toolbox and measure out my Allen key to make sure I get the right one. So anyway, I'm gonna remove those 4. So 2 there, 2 on the other side. They're already off. I'll get those off. Okay, exhaust is off. It came right out. It's just those 2 pipes, down pipes right there. They go to the muffler, and there's a little gasket. Those gaskets, they're blown. So I will replace them. I better order them right now. Look at that. I guess if you were in a real jam, you could use that copper silicone, the high heat stuff. But I just mowed my grass today before I started this, so I've got a week. So I'm gonna order a couple gaskets. I like to do things right. Hate doing things twice. So there's the clutch, all dirty and oily and grassy and everything, but came off of here. And all I did is I undid the bolt out of it, which is a really long bolt, and obviously the wire is disconnected, and it was sort of hanging there. Of course, I removed the belt as well. It was just sort of hanging there. I gave it one hit with my hand, just like that, and it came right off. And there it is. So now we have this other little pulley, which on the back side I can feel that there's a keyway. So we'll get this belt off and worry about this pulley when the engine's out, because there's a big hole that fits that pulley right through it, so we won't have to worry about that. Okay, we'll get that belt off, and then the engine mounting bolts, and we should be good. All right, so I forgot to film the bulk of it, but I was doing lifting and stuff like that. So engine's out, obviously. I flipped it upside down, put it on some wood blocks just to keep it not on metal. So what we're gonna do, this is the oil pump itself. So we're gonna remove this cover. We're gonna replace that O-ring under there. And we're gonna remove all the bolts that hold this on. Because this cover came with not only a new gasket, but new bolts. So we'll get those off. I better get this pulley off as well. Look at that, it just slides right off. Well, it's starting to. So it looks like, yes. That keyway, you just have to tap that guy out, and that'll come off. Pretty simple. Oh, and I might have skipped saying I did drain the oil. I took this right out, and it was only hand tight, which I was a little surprised. So I think I'll put a little Teflon on that guy when I tighten it up. I'm gonna make sure it's working properly. And if you look here, if I get it out of the sunlight, you can see all that soot. So that gasket's been leaking a while. And here's the other side here. So sooty here and sooty at the back. So yeah, it's been leaking. And we're gonna clean up all this debris, grass, oil, everything. Get it cleaned up a little bit, and that too. Rinse it out, clean it up, make it last. The other thing we've got to do is remove this governor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this nut and slide this off. I'm going to leave all those springs on, but I am going to have a good look at them in case one falls off. And there's another one down here. It's hooked on there, way over there somewhere. There we go. I can see it now. All right, so there's 2 springs. Anyway, yeah, so loosen that, pull this gear off. There is a setup procedure for putting it back on. Maybe we'll put a little mark on it just so I know exactly where it was, and we'll see if it's the same. Okay. So I remove those 3 bolts. Little guys here, I think they're 5/16, something like that. Take this cover off. There's the O-ring we're going to replace. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but we're going to replace it anyway. Now there's your oil pump. What we're going to do, I believe if you pull this cover off, that drive, so the center of it right there, drops out. So you got to pull that out. So what we're going to do is we're going to take both these gears, maybe, hopefully, and pull them out. Might be a 2-handed operation. So anyway, that's my next step. So both removed. I left the side that I know is up, so I know which way it goes back in. Now we're going to pull this drive out, which comes out fairly easy. Yep. And it's obvious which way it goes. It only goes one way. We'll set that there. So there we go. That's all done. Now there's a bunch of perimeter bolts on here. I'm going to undo it the reverse way of the torquing sequence. So bolts removed. I removed the cover. Let's have a look at this gasket. There's the governor. Like I said, I just set it over to the side. Right there. And right there. And I think that's where our major oil leak was, right there. And I know a little bit more fell inside. I think it was probably out here like that. Something like that. But see, it got sucked in. So the new gasket's made of a better material. So let's get this old one off, get it all cleaned up, and get this cover back on. All right, so I got it all cleaned up. I can still see a little bit. I'll probably go over it one more time. But anyway, wiped it all with a cloth and some brake cleans and just sort of gave it the backyard cleanup. Same over here. Cleaned all the gasket surface. Down in here, made sure that if there was any bits that went down there, I got them out. Cleaned it up as best I could. The other thing you need to know, this governor goes like this, goes back and forth. You want it all the way in that position. You can see right there where it contacts, and you don't want it interfering when you're putting the cover on. So you want it this way. I knocked out that seal that's at the other end of this, and I'm going to put a new seal in, and then I'm going to put this cover back on. As for sealer, I don't put any on here, or I'm not going to. Another thing, these locating pins, there's 2 of them. Make sure they're there, and we'll get this gasket in place and get that cover on. I would have put the seal in first, but the seal ended up being in the wrong seal. So I gotta go order that tomorrow. But I put the gasket on, it was right. Put all new bolts in, and I'm just finishing off now. Last few. And there is a torquing sequence. So in that package of parts, there's a paper, and it tells you all that. Torquing sequence and torquing spec. But I don't want to leave this engine open overnight, so sitting here outside, so I will cover it with plastic and all that. But anyway, I want to get all this sealed up. All right, so we're going to put this together. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Put oil in this pump. It's an oil pump, and it requires a little bit of lubrication to get started. Now, down there, you can't really see it. It's hard to see. No, you can't see it. There's a slot. And in that slot is that. So I can see it. You can't. That's the way it is. But that goes in there. So just make sure you line that up. I'm going to pour a little bit of oil in here, all in this cavity, I'm not going to fill it. I'm just going to pour a bunch in there and then put this together. I think that'd be a lot better. Just like that. And we'll put this in. There we go. Now you'll notice that that has 2 flats on it and 2 curved sides. So when you look at this gear, it's got 2 flats and 2 curves. And then that one. So we're going to put this one in first. There's still lots of oil, but you know what, I'm going to put a little bit more oil on it. Yeah, that's it. There we go. I want oil all over this gear. And I'm left-handed, so okay, there we go. Now this guy, like I said, it's got 2 flats. You can feel them there and there. I want oil all over it. So we'll just make sure I've got oil everywhere. And that should go like that. And you might have to turn it a bit to get it seated. There it goes. Now, O-ring will go in there. I'm going to wipe all the excess oil out of there and out of here. And we'll just put a little bit of oil on the O-ring itself. And then put the cover on and the 3 screws. Boom. Done. Alright, so I'm going to change that drive belt. And that's the one that goes to the 2 transmissions. And then there's a tensioner in the middle. And attached to the tensioner is a spring. So, can we see the pulleys? There's one pulley there. And one, you can just see a bit of it there. So that's what goes around. But the interesting thing is this tensioner, which I cleaned up. I took this out. This just slides out, so it's no big deal. See, just pushes out. I cleaned it all up and I put some nice fresh grease on there. I'm going to grease the fitting, of course, as well. There's a washer there. I took it off, wiped everything off, got it clean. And here's an interesting bit. That square right there. So that's where we can put a 3/8 extension or a ratchet. Will fit right into that, and we can use that to get the belt on a lot easier. So here's the old belt. Was it worth changing? Well, it's covered in oil, which is, you know, never that good. It's got a big slice in it right there, so that's going to give at some point. I'm going to say we didn't waste our time. And I went actually to the dealer and got the proper belt for it. Spent all my money. All right, so I'm going to get that on. All right, so I pulled off the PTO belt. So this is the belt that drives the deck itself. And was it worth changing? I would definitely say so. It's got some shredding or whatever's going on here. Yeah, definitely didn't waste my money on that. This is a bit of a thicker belt, and it is a very easy belt to change. I'm impressed on that, although I haven't got it on yet. So let me be impressed in a minute. All right, almost a week later, I got my parts. Engine's still out, obviously. Because it's sitting outside, I do most of my work outside. So anyway, wrapped it up with plastic, pretty easy, and I'm gonna unwrap it and get to it. The other thing I did, other than wrap the carb up in plastic, I want to be doubly sure on that. The other thing I did is gave this a good cleaning. So I went through everything, I turned the engine on its side, everything, went down in all these grooves with a piece of wood like a popsicle stick, and just cleaned out everything and got it all nice and clean. The sun is not helping me today, but all right, I've stalled long enough. I'll go grab that seal. We're going to put it in. So I got the seal. Originally, when I ordered all the parts, I ordered a seal from the engine number, and for whatever reason it was smaller. This one's about 1 5/8 or 42 mil, depends how you look at it, and that's that diameter of that part of the crankshaft there, not this here. So anyway, so when I ordered the second one, I made sure I made an outside diameter measurement, an inside diameter measurement, and if you look very carefully somewhere there, right there, there's a part number. Yeah, I had to get like my glasses, magnifying glass, and a flashlight. But anyway, here's a new one, matched it up, it's all the same, and the number is on the outside of this one, and that makes it a lot easier to ID and find. So anyway, when I put this on, I'm going to put a little bit of oil, just engine oil, on this part of the seal because it's got to slide down on that shaft. The other thing I like to do is I like to rotate it as I'm putting it on. That just helps this lip slide on, because in the seal, there's the old one again, there's a little spring. You see it in there? And that's actually what does the sealing. Well, the rubber does the sealing, the spring puts the tension on the seal. So if you dislodge that spring, no sealing's gonna happen. Anyway, that's your 1 minute lesson on seals. So I'm gonna put this guy in. I have to admit, this seal is a little bit ignorant. I've knocked that spring on the inside there, I've knocked it completely out. But obviously I didn't get the seal too far on. I used a seal installer like this, which goes over the shaft and everything, but that doesn't seem to work. That's how I knocked that spring out. So now, I went in the kitchen and stole a little piece of plastic. What I'm gonna do is curl that up, put it on the inside of the seal, put it over the shaft, and then see if I can slide the seal on. So like this. This is my idea. Little piece of plastic. It'll go over the crankshaft, and then make sure the plastic itself is on far enough that the seal lip won't get snagged on it or anything like that. And I'm gonna push that in. All right. Well, next idea. We're gonna put the plastic around the crankshaft first, so it's a little bit tight, and then I'm gonna slide the seal on. So same idea, it's just I couldn't get this plastic to go around the crankshaft very easily. We'll taper this end, so right here will be a little bit smaller. That seal will go on nicely and slide all the way to the other end. At least that's my theory. Here it is in action. Plastic is around the crankshaft, the seal's partway on, you know, just barely. I just pushed it on by hand. Now I'm gonna get a hammer and a flat punch and tap it in 4 different positions until I get it in all the way. All right, so now the moment of truth. I did tap it around, all the way around, got it partway on. I'm gonna pull this plastic out. Let's make sure that seal sealed. Pull it out nice and evenly. And I wanted to do it before I got the seal all the way in, because that way, oh, that's not good. All right, attempt number 27. Just kidding. All right, so I got it partway in, and I saw that that lip had folded out onto the crankshaft. So I very carefully pulled the seal back out, which is pretty hard to do. Cut this plastic, so now it only just fits. It's only the same diameter. And I got the seal all started again. And we'll try tapping on the seal once again. All right, finally I got that thing in there. If you look all around the crankshaft, between the crankshaft and the seal, there's no seal sticking out, and that's the whole idea. Now it's not in all the way. You'll notice that it's just flush, but now I have to seat it so it goes in just a little bit further. Sometimes you can use the old seal for that, or a seal driver or something like that. All right, so we got it in, it's seated. You can see that there's a little bit of a lip in between the seal and the edge of the pan there. So it's in all the way. If you had to remove a seal like this, and you're not gonna take this pan off, which is the easiest way to do it, I think now. But in my lifetime, I've changed a few thousand seals, and sometimes they're not easy to get out. But one little trick I did learn is to drill a very small hole away from the crankshaft and away from the cover, of course, on either side, and then thread in a little small screw, and then you can pry it on the 2 screws, and you can just walk it out. So anyway, this one was easy to get off with the pan off. That's the way I would do it, and if I was to do this again, that seal would go in first and then the pan would go back on. Definitely gonna be easier, but the old potato bag worked. So if you're in a pinch like I was, that's the way to do it. Okay, seal's in, put the pulley back on. There's a keyway that lines up with that keyway shaft, and it goes in like that all the way. I remember which way it went on, so I put it on the same way. Another keyway, and that's for the PTO, and it sort of just sits up against this one, stops it from dropping off, and also does its keyway thing with the other pulley. All right, we'll get that in. All right, so we know that the governor, to be set, has to be pushed this way. So what I'm going to use is a 1/4 inch wrench, and we're going to put it on the end of this, and you get a little bit of movement. Here it is. That's it. So you get that much movement. So that's not going to stay there. This bolt here is loose. I can turn it with my hand. See? And it's not a nut on the other side. It's like a square that fits in there. Key point, make sure that this thing is on all the way. So it sits up against a little shoulder down in there. Down in there. So we'll put a 1/4 inch wrench on there. We're going to open this throttle all the way. So this wide open throttle is this way. I put a little arrow. And I double check the cable, so I do know. So I'm going to, with one hand, hold the throttle, hold that wrench, so that governor is up against the thing inside that I showed you earlier. All right, plane's going over. Jeez. Anyway, so you got all that, right? Open throttle all the way. We're gonna, with a 1/4 inch wrench, we're gonna move this so that governor is pushing against, and we're gonna tighten that nut. All right, okay, everything's tight. So let's just look at that shaft and that arm and make sure they move in unison. Now you could get your paint pen and put a mark on it, but we'll just, you got eyes, we can see that. So yes, it's moving the way it should move. That's what we want. All right, so the electrical connectors that go to your coil, you definitely want those clean. So I give those a clean up, put a little dielectric grease on there, and I'll plug it in. It plugs in underneath the coil, so you won't be able to see that. Oh yeah, can you see that? I don't know. It's back in there anyway, right up in there. So the other one is obviously here where the other coil is, coming from that direction, I think. And that wire's still on the mower. All right, so I'm going to clean that up. That wire had fallen down, fell down way down here. And I fished around with my long needle nose pliers and I pulled out this. What is that from? So if you look around, maybe you can see it right there on the starter. So there's the same type of spring in there. See it there? And I think that's all. That's that return spring there. So I don't know how it got there, but maybe that means that's a new starter. Does look sort of new-ish. All right, time to put this in. So I put on the drive belt. That's what this is here. So it goes around the crankshaft pulley, right, the bottom of the engine. Goes around this way, around this tensioner pulley, and over to the one drive, across the front, around the other drive, and back around here. So there's a big spring. Where is it? It's right there. That big spring is really tight. So what I did is I fought with it. Really, it was really nasty to get on. There's that square there you can use. When you're fighting this hitch, it doesn't help. If I had jacked it up, took a wheel off, I think I would have had a better chance at doing it easily anyway. Anyway, it's all done. I greased that fitting right there. made sure it was full of grease. And now I'm going to put the PTO drive on, which is here. This lines up with that right there. Stops it from spinning, and who knows what else. We got some wires, so we'll connect them, and we'll tighten this bolt, and then we can put the top of the engine back on. The bottom belt here, the PTO belt, is a lot easier. So I just started it here and worked it all the way around, and then just rotated the pulley, and it snapped into place. So I'm going to change the fuel filter, that way I know it's new. So I picked up a fuel filter from the small engines place, which actually looks like a little GM Quadrajet filter back in the day, like in the 70s and 80s. That's what they look like. There's no marking on this saying in and out, but I know when they were in the Quadrajet, that was it. So that's the way it's going. So in and out, and if you look, it's like the same shape as the other one, so that's got to be the way. Anyway, that's just a spare line I put on it to stop it from leaking while I pulled the engine. We'll take that clamp off and change this filter. Okay, so I buttoned up the covers, so put all the bolts back in, made sure they were tight, because some were loose before. Tightened up that fuel pump. I loosened it off. I don't remember why. I don't think I really needed to, but I did anyway. Now would be a good time to put the oil in while I think about it. And I put this cover back on as well. Make sure they were tight. You got to be careful. This is plastic, so it's, you know, just watch you're not over torquing it. Don't use an impact gun. Anyway, got to sort out a couple things with wires. I got to connect that one. I think I'll connect it down here, and then I'll eliminate that joint, and a couple tie wraps and stuff. It should look good. You might notice that positive cable, I rerouted it and shortened it just a little bit, put new ends on it, and moved that cover, which was down there, up here. Made more sense. So, almost done. Okay, I just finished mowing. You can see all the fresh grass on there. Let's have a look and see if there's any oil leak down here. Nice and dry. This was the original spot right here. I don't see a thing. And same over here. All right, job done. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.